Assalamu alaikum. And to members of the audience who really don't trade that greeting with each other, I still extend my general well wishes and greetings. Now, since this video is on a public channel, although it is generally it's in response to a private post on social media in a private group, I'm not going to mention names, though I will mention the content of the post. Those who are not in this private group might be able to benefit still without necessarily knowing the names because, as usual, the message is more important than the messenger. The post said, Nikkah is a contract that transfers responsibilities. Therefore, know the man you're thinking of marrying and be sure that he is able to take care of you more than your dad did. Islam empowers women with honor and dignity. Don't settle for anything less. The very first comment I saw in response to this, I had to put the fist up for it. It was a sister that said, honestly, nowadays you can't fully know someone through dating unless you marry them, period. That's true. Dating is not the same thing as marriage. Dating them first does not tell you who you're going to be marrying. She continues, the whole thing about know the person you're marrying before marrying them is BS. That is very true. Yes, you don't really know. You can know certain things. However, you can't know everything, and that is why the wali is important. The wali for the woman is the one who can tell certain things about other men, having been a man for years, and is able to know certain things about men, and therefore to know this man coming to the doorstep, and can in a sense be that filter, that logical filter, and that experience filter for his daughter, niece, cousin, sister, maybe even an aunt. Because we have to understand that if the woman is willing to marry that man to begin with, then she's going to need someone who can look into this man and see. Now, this leads into another topic of walis and marriage, but let me address the standard that was put into this particular post. This post was a quote from Noman Ali Khan. Noman Ali Khan is very intelligent. Oh, he's highly intelligent, but let me tell you this. Noman Ali Khan is not always right, and he'll tell you he's not always right. He doesn't even pretend to be. The man is highly intelligent, and he's got a good team that can really make some good graphic videos of his lessons. But by the same token, I'm also going to let you all know that Noman Ali Khan is not necessarily revolutionary, and that's part of what's missing. Many of the ulama and the shuyukh today are not really revolutionary in any form of they're not very counterculture in their way of thinking or in their way of explaining things. And there has to be a bit of a counterculture element to us, because what are we surrounded by? It's definitely not Islam. Now, there's another comment in here in response to that first comment that I mentioned. And that comment summed up exactly what this post sounds like. It was a sister that said this: making sure he can take care of you sounds like it has less to do with honor and dignity and maybe more to do with deep pockets. That is in fact the case. You see, the wali needs to look at a man's responsibility levels. But when it comes to looking into a man's finances, let's call it what it is, that's a setup for heartbreak there. Because if you look at whether a man can afford to take care of a woman and all the number of children that are going to come later on in life, no man can ever afford it. Unless, of course, he's stinking rich. Now, let's call another question into question, if we will, an important question from our experience. How many of you know an upright pious, 8 prayers a day saying Muslim who's also wealthy and he's young. They don't go together. You ain't going to be righteous, pious, young, and wealthy at the same time. It's just not going to happen. If that does happen, chances are there's some other health problem that's going to come in and play. Because bottom line, Allah's going to test with something that you don't like. He promised to test us with hardship and ease, and that's exactly what he's doing. And that's exactly what we're going to go through. Test of hardship and ease. A whole lot of hardship. Very little ease. And when people are righteous, they really don't get a whole lot of that test of ease. They get it, but it ain't going to be much. Let's just be honest about that. You're not going to be a righteous person and come out and you get all these tests of ease. Certainly not while you're young. So, in order to protect the chastity of the community, walis and ladies are going to have to make a very tough decision. And this decision is going to have to be, look, are we going to prioritize money or are we going to prioritize chastity? Because if you're not going to be able to do both, you're just not going to be able to do both. Sorry, it's not going to happen. Especially in societies like where we live. The avenues to wrong are open. And now, even in Muslim societies, the avenues to wrong are open. If you are a young Saudi man living in Saudi Arabia, it is easier for you to get girls' phone numbers and later on commit zina with them than it is for you to get married. And committing zina is a pretty difficult thing to do. It's not easy, per se, not all the time, but it's easier than getting married. You know what's easier than either one of these two? They call it bizaranjia, homosexuality. That's, I hate to say it, but that's what's going on. That's easier than the other. Now, you take the 3 options. 1, marriage. It's halal, it's fine, it's recommended, you should do it. Then you've got zina. It's a sin, it's a forgivable sin, but it's a sin. It's not halal. People have a chance of coming back from that if they repent. But in a context like this, it's not an easy thing to repent from. And then, of course, you've got the worst thing with it, which is homosexuality. And that's worse than celibacy. Celibacy is bad. I'll tell you, I didn't send down any authority for celibacy. This is in the Quran. He did not authorize monasticism, celibacy. He didn't even authorize it. But you take homosexuality, and that's worse than celibacy. Well, I mean, come on, y'all. So the societies that we live in are going to have to make some very tough choices. Because celibacy, hell, that almost doesn't even exist. I hate to say it, but it just almost doesn't exist in hardly any society. So if poverty is going to be a barrier to getting married for righteous people, then that is the mechanism by which each generation gets worse and worse and worse than the one before. Now I know what the mechanism is. It makes sense now. Since poverty is the barrier to marriage, and we act like it's a legitimate barrier to marriage, then hey, guess what? The people with the money are going to get married first. Well, how do they get the money? Now, when I was on my last vacation in the U.S., there was a movie called The Free State of Jones. And it was about Knight Newton in, I forgot what county in Jones County in Mississippi, which was not largely a slaveholding county, but it was in the South, and it was in Mississippi, and therefore it was expected to go along with the secessionist movement, just like the rest of the state of Mississippi and the rest of the Deep South. And they did not. Their economy did not even depend on slavery. But there's a scene in there where some people are surrounding him and they're listening to him, and they say, look, man, he says something about striking at the large plantation holders because they were the ones for the secessionist movement, and they were immune to the draft into the Confederate Army, but the regular rank and file people who did not even own human beings were not immune to the draft and could be conscripted into the army, forced to fight, and forced to die for no good reason. And when he said we need to strike at them, someone says, are we going to just strike at the rich people? And he said, it's why they're rich. It's the same thing with us today. We got to learn to face this. This is a tough world we live in. It's always been this way, really. Character and responsibility, these are things to look into. Finances, you will inevitably limit yourself from marrying someone, or limit your lady relatives from marrying someone who is righteous and pious if you're going to look at wealth. God's not walking around here picking out the righteous and pious people to test them with wealth. It happens, but that is a very, 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 very rare thing. Very rare. It's so rare, most of us can't think of somebody we know who was righteous and pious and was tested with wealth. Certainly not while they were young. Now, you look at the number of people. Ask those who, ask people, how many of you know someone that was tested with wealth while they were young and they were righteous and pious? And I say righteous and pious because those are two different things. Righteousness is a part of piety, but piety does not always come into righteousness. You got people who are righteous, excellent character, but they really don't, they're not God-fearing. They're hardly even thinking about God sometimes. But now you take pious people and they want to practice righteousness because of their piety, their fear of God, their remembrance of God. So if you take someone righteous and pious and young, how many people even know someone like that who was tested with wealth? Now you're talking about 4 conditions that we would all like to have being in the same place at the same time. We're lucky if we get 3. If you're going to look for all 4 of these things in the same person, you're never going to find a husband for your lady relatives. And what the hell you think they're going to turn around and do? If they get married in secret without your permission, you're lucky. That's if they get married in secret without your permission. What if they don't get married? I just got a boyfriend. Then what? Like I said, celibacy almost doesn't exist. Celibacy is about as rare as finding people who are tested with youth and righteousness and piety and wealth at the same time. Now, celibacy is rarer than the test that I mentioned. So, we're going to have to make a very tough choice here. And I'm not saying this, I'm not saying this for my selfish reasons. Yeah, I'm broke. I'm going to die in debt. But I'm also married. I'm one of the fortunate ones. But I can tell you, if I had to be wealthy in order to get married, I would have never, ever, 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 ever gotten married. So if you have a culture that demands you be wealthy before you get married, your culture is evil, straight up. And this is something that we got largely from the colonizers. The Europeans, the Western world gave us this mindset. Got to be wealthy before you get married. Man, are you serious? Are you kidding me? The ones who gave the Muslim world this mindset, and even large swaths of the non-Muslim world this mindset, are the exact same ones who run around practicing fornication at this point. And then when they do get married, they practice adultery. You're going to take this stupid kafir idea from the ones who are pouring fire and brimstone on their own private parts. And they become our advisors? Man, miss me with that mess. Most women are going to have to face a choice. They can either get married later in life and skip that poverty business, or they can get married young in life, which is better for the chastity and their child rearing years, but they're going to have to go through some poverty. That's what it's going to have to be. And same with guys. You know, a lot of men, I see a lot of men saying, well, I don't have the money to get married. No, actually, you may have enough to get married. I mean, Islamically speaking, you just don't have enough to get married, culturally speaking, because the culture is backwards. And that means it's time to migrate to another culture. And Saudi made a grave mistake when they stopped letting men marry foreign women. When they turn 30, they get permission easily. But what about in their 20s? That's when people are supposed, men and women, that's when they're supposed to be getting married. Maybe even 19. What about then? I'm sorry, but the way, the customs that we have and these ideas that we have with marriage, we need to start getting rid of them. You know, maybe what Noman Ali Khan is saying is okay to say in a community that are all doctors and engineers. Yeah, fine, okay. Make sure he can take better care of you than your father, financially speaking. Okay, well, maybe he comes from a community that is largely doctors and engineers. Yeah, but what about a community wherein a lot of people are taxi cab drivers? Because they weren't able to come to this country, or rather the country you all are living in, with everything on their backs anyway. They had to leave in a hurry. It's not going to work. Plus, you're talking, this is not something that belongs in a Somali community, as an example. This kind of post does not belong in front of West Africans. It does not belong in a masjid that is largely Latin American. This kind of post has no business amongst them, because this is a racist world, not just the racist set of nations we live in. We live in a racist world. The entire world is being turned against black. Even in the continent of Africa, skin bleach is the highest cosmetic selling product. That's racism against oneself. That's an inferiority complex, self-hatred, watching too much of this damn TV that white folks put out. This is an issue. This is something we got to do away with. This is a problem, a serious problem. I'm not even talking about the racism at this point, which I am, which is a problem. But at this point, I'm talking about the ideas that we get. You're coming up a person of color in a racist world, and you think that you're going to have money, which is already in the hands of Europeans. The resources might be under our feet, but the money and the cash are in the hands of the Europeans. So you think you're going to be the exact same race and origin these folks can't stand, and you're going to walk off with tons of money? It doesn't work like that. The dunya is not a place of reward for us. It's a place of test. If we wanted it to be a place of reward and test for us, we would have to physically overrun Europe and the United States and Australia and take their wealth away from them. By force. That's what it would take. Muammar Gaddafi had a plan, one plan. It's like, if it's a plan, it's that simple. Somebody would have thought of it before, right? But he had one plan, and he had the connections to pull this off. He was going to come up with a currency based on resources, and they killed him. This is not something you can just plan. You can't just make a business plan and you're going to change the color of wealth around the world. If it's as simple as a plan, they'll just resort to violence. They're going to force you. So this is something that must be understood. This going beyond marriage, you're going to have to address the subject of wealth and color. And if you have color, meaning melanin, and you decide you're not willing to tolerate poverty, you're going to have to kill some white people. Now, maybe for you individually, you might be able to escape. But if you decide you're going to financially help a community of color, white people will kill you, or you'll have to kill them. No, it's not every white person, but their system is set up this way. So we can't sit up here and try to address the issue of poverty by saying, well, we just won't marry those who are poor. You can't outbreed poverty. It's not going to work. White supremacy is a worldwide system, and it will maintain people of color mainly black people at the bottom and other people of color in the middle as a buffer zone, and white on top. If black people who are poor and other people of color who are poor simply don't have any more kids, which is one thing they would love to see, guess what? They still need someone to be poor. Guess who they're going to get to be poor? Some of the children of the wealthy. Bottom line. Poverty for people of color is institutionalized worldwide at this point. So it does no good to say, well, we're not going to marry if we're poor. You're going to have to get rid of that. Otherwise, you're going to fall right into the same eugenics trap that they've set up for you in the first place. The idea of not getting married if you're poor is something that they wanted for poor whites. The idea of not getting married if you're poor and you're not white is something that they didn't mind, but they still wanted a certain number of babies to be had. But they want to control the reproduction of people of color. Don't give them an ounce of that. And that's exactly what this kind of post can lead to. If Nouman Ali Khan was not talking about just money and deep pockets and finding all this dunya stuff, if that's not what he was talking about, that's still the way that many people would read it. So if he wasn't talking in that context or with that meaning, that's great, that's good. But we still have to be careful not to take that meaning, because it's not going to do us any good. Financially speaking, yes, the responsibilities are on the men. That is true. I'm not knocking that. It's his job to share what he gets with the family. Yes, it is not his job to guarantee a minimum income. Allah won't allow that. You Muslim, you sworn off hell, you're trying to get to paradise. Part of the application fee is that you're going to have to suffer loss of this dunya in this dunya. That's part of it. And if Allah does not test you with that, he'll take another test just as difficult and replace it with that. That's the way it works. This dunya is not a place of reward, it is a place of test. And marriage is still a command from God. And most people ain't going to be rich, especially the righteous and pious. So, what are you going to do about it now? I hope that this message has been of benefit. Assalamu alaikum.